Welcome to the Going North podcast, where we will deliver you tips and techniques to advance yourself in anything you decide to do. I'm your host, author, speaker, and book enthusiast, Dom Brightman, and every Thursday I will interview authors, especially self-published ones, from various walks of life, who will deliver you some inspiration and information to advance yourself. And speaking of advancement, be sure to pick up the book called Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, written by yours truly on Amazon.com, in both ebook, physical paperback, and audiobook. And let's get on with the show. On today's episode of the Going North podcast, we have a wonderful guest, another author, if you haven't guessed by now. And this author in particular is a special lady because she served in Operation Desert Storm during the Gulf War I. And she has seen many horrifying situations on and off of the battlefield. And not only that, she has experienced some life-changing events such as illnesses, difficult life situations, treacherous work environments, and so much more. But through it all, she was able to slay each giant with God's almighty help, because this wonderful author, lady, and veteran has overcome a lot, and she has placed her knowledge as well as some spiritual knowledge from the good word known as the Bible into a book called Victorious, Defeating Giants and Bullies God's Way. And you may be wondering, who is this special lady? She is the wonderful Darnnell Reese. How are you?
I'm good, Dom. Thank you so much for that introduction. I've never heard myself sound so great.
Sweet.
I do want to give you a little bit of a correction, and I apologize because this is your show. But
go ahead.
Victorious, Defeating Bullies and Giants God's Way. I think you reversed the giants and bullies, but that's okay. That's okay.
It's all good, whether they giants or midget giants or
as long as we play it, right?
Exactly.
That's all that matters.
Well, alrighty, Miss Darnnell, tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you currently are today.
Okay, so I'm married, I'm a mother, employed full-time for the federal government. I live in Fort Washington, Maryland. I represent D.C. I went to D.C. Public Schools. Shout out to D.C. Public Schools. Hashtag Dave Chappelle. I know. I graduated in 1989 at the age of 17, and you've probably read a little bit in the book from one of the testimonies that I immediately joined the Army. And that was partly to get away from my home environment, which to me was not conducive to what I wanted to do. I had dreams of doing things that I couldn't really tell you what, but I just knew it wasn't going to involve becoming, a statistic, which is what I saw from my environment. Although I have to say that the majority of the class of 1989 at McKinley Tech High School in DC, they are awesome. Those students, my peers, they have done big things, great things. They're all productive members of society. They have great jobs. In fact, I'm on Facebook with many of them, and they are living the dream. There's no drug abuse. Not that I know everybody's household, but these people seem, from all appearances, that they're just like me, suburban middle class families, concentrating on their kids, on their husbands, on their wives, and they're doing big things. So my hat's off to them. Everybody must have had that same burning desire like I did. Like, I'm not going to do what I see going on around me, because I don't know if you remember, but back in the late 80s, there was a big crack epidemic came out, and people were dropping like flies. They were overdosing. People were becoming statistics as far as teenage pregnancy. So we saw things that we all probably said to ourselves, that's not going to be me. I'm going to get the heck up on out of here. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to join the military, but I'm just not going to sit here and be stagnant.
That's what I'm talking about. Just not being stagnant, never settling for the mediocre, and just making sure that you set yourself apart from just seeing the pain that's going on in others' lives. I mean, the crack epidemic back in the 80s, and heck, it's even resurging today, at least from the news standpoint, with the opioid crisis. It's
terrible, and methamphetamines, all that. But back in the day in DC and Baltimore, and I do realize you're younger than I am. In fact, you're the same age as my daughter, which I told you. She didn't know all this, but the Washington DC area was like ranked #1 murder capital of the United States at that time. I'm not sure where they rank now, but it was pretty horrific, with all the shootings and gang violence. It wasn't even really gang violence, it was drug violence, like people who were trying to protect their territory as far as their corner. It was a lot of that going on. It wasn't even MS-13, because I think those were relatively, within the last 20 years, but I'm going back further than that. So I joined the military. I wanted to do something with electronics and computers, so I joined the MI Corps. But nonetheless, it still landed me down in Saudi Arabia when the Persian Gulf War broke out. I was in Europe at the time, and then our unit we were actually about to disband, but then all of a sudden someone came up with the brilliant idea, okay, well, if you got troops over in Europe, let them come over here and be led by General Schwarzkopf, and we'll take this enemy out in one fell swoop, and da-da-da. So that's how I ended up there, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. I started off, I was 18 at the time. I missed home terribly, and the food sucked, and that's another thing that will make you miss home even more, because if you can't get a good meal, I mean, you're eating, but you're eating what they call MREs, meals ready to eat, and they were just terrible. They're like these vacuum sealed packages of freeze-dried food, and it was terrible, Dom. I don't even know how to explain it. Dentimore in a can, served cold, is best how I could describe how this food was. Do you know what Dentimore is?
I've seen the packaging, heard the name, not sure of the taste.
It's a stew, and they try to be close to homemade stew, like with those little bitty carrots, but the beef it doesn't even taste like it's real beef, and then it's conglomerated, or whatever the word is, that it's just clumpy, and it doesn't have a pleasant feel on the palate. So you're eating it, probably holding your nose, hoping to just swallow it down and just get some sustenance, but it's just not good. And you miss your mom's home cooking. You're sleeping out in like dirty tents close to the ground on a cot filled with sand, and you got sand fleas. It was terrible. All of it was terrible.
Oh my gosh, sand fleas. Oh my goodness.
That wasn't even the worst. They had field mice, they had scorpions, so you had to check your shoes every time you got up and got ready to go somewhere. It was and it was hot. But before it was hot, it was actually cold. So they have winter, and then they have extreme heat. So there's no in between.
So it's yin yang. It's either you're going to wake up hot, or you're going to wake up in the middle of the night and it's cold.
Exactly. So getting out of there was a blessing. Thank God. I mean, I survived, but it was just one of those things, why me, But I really don't question it even though I said it, I don't question it because everybody goes through something.
It's true. I mean, no test, no testimony, right?
Right. So fast forward, I didn't stay in the military after that because I felt like if I did another 20 years to retire, and if I had to go to any more wars, that would be the end of me, because that was enough to push anybody to the brink. Seriously. So I said, you know what, I'm done. I got my combat patch. I got my war with my Southwest Asia medal. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. Let me get out, finish some quality education, and settle myself into a career. And so that's what I did. And I worked my way through the electronics and computer industry and ultimately ended up in forensic analysis. So I started doing cyber forensics, cyber analysis, all that IT related stuff. And then I also had a stint with database technology. That's what I got my degree in when I graduated in 2007 from Strayer. And then, so I parlayed that into just a lot of computer field related stuff, such as IT specialists in the federal government, forensic analysts, and now I'm a program analyst. So basically what happened is, once I accepted other jobs, my series changed, but it didn't vanquish any of the experience that I gained earlier on. So I still consider myself someone who's learned IT specialist type work or computer related work, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes all sorts of pennies, quarters, all types of sense.
Okay, good. And so, so that's me and my career. I told you I have a child. She's 25. She'll be 26 in November. She lives in Richmond, California. I have a husband. He works for U.S. Capitol Police. He's a great guy, very supportive. You met him.
Great guy indeed.
Yes, that's my babe. And how I ended up writing the book was because throughout all those years of, from the time I graduated high school, actually even before, because there were situations in high school that I know I had to deal with where bullying was involved. But if you, read some of the book, I don't address anything until way after I graduated high school, and not even in the military, but mainly in my federal careers, or there was one private industry sector that I spoke about, but mainly the trials that I overcame, they were from my federal career, my adult life after the military.
Isn't it kind of amazing that happens like in adult life where you think, oh, I'm out of grade school, I'm going to be in college, in your case like the Army, I ain't going to deal with no bullies at all, that's all behind me, but only to find out that grade school really extends into life in some situations.
You're right. Absolutely. And I write about that in the book, like bullies don't go away. So the theme of the book is a lot like that 2015 movie War Room, in that it demonstrates how God fights for his people. So just using the Bible and I guess just the foundation of God's word, basically. He has it in there for a reason, which is to help his people. So if you've read the Bible, you know that there are so many stories in there that are rich with an antagonist and a protagonist, and in some way that protagonist or the good guy victim is being bullied or oppressed or harmed by the antagonist. And it doesn't matter what they are. It could be a giant, a literal giant like Goliath, or it could just be a mean-spirited, tyrannical person who felt that he or she was more powerful than the little person that they're trying to put their thumb on and squash out and kill, ultimately. That's what they're trying to do, basically. Whether they think it or not, I feel like an oppressor of any sort is not going to stop until a person or a victim that they've targeted is no longer there, whether it's physically not there in their presence or if that person is wasted away and dead.
Yeah, it's really horrible with the whole bully thing, and it's actually a very present topic in today's society. I mean, it's just crazy how.
And it's unfortunate too.
Yeah.
So I felt like after reading the Bible, I started pulling together just God's trying to tell me something. He's showing me all these different stories of this person, and this person who were tormented or blocked in some way or prevented in some way from doing something. And the victim generally would be paralyzed with fear, like to the point where they couldn't even make a move. But once they realized that God was on their side, that he is not an advocator of bullies or giants, that he is the reason for their demise. And once these people understood that, they called out to God, like they just by instinct, they got on their knees, they lifted up their hands in prayer, they cried, they did whatever, and he came through. Like he heard them. And one of the passages I even quoted how Abel's blood cried out from the ground for God's help. And that's how God knew that Cain had harmed his brother. Can you believe that?
Sadly, yes. It's like folks, they see the Bible as this book of just stories, but when you delve deep into it and actually read it, it's like this stuff happens in real life today still. It's like, why?
And for him to say, your brother's blood called out to me from the ground, that tells me God is seriously listening. He is not just, ho hum, I'm off on a mission today, I'll check on the people when I get back. Although people seem to think that God is so absent, he's not here. He is omnipresent. So when I read that and other stories that I mentioned and quoted from the Bible, I'm like, oh no, he is a very present help in times of trouble. And that's another quote from, I think, Psalms. See, I'm not the one that can tell you, quote and chapter and verse of anything. I just know it's in there. It's like Prego. It's in there. But that stood out to me, how he says, your brother's blood cried out to me from the ground. If you really contemplate that man had no voice, but his spirit, his essence was in the ground mourning. And God was like, oh, wait a minute. I hear my child calling me. That's awesome. I mean, that's like mother hen, mother bear. You're not going to get away with it right now. Because now God knows.
That's right. He knows all about your troubles, who you wronged, and you're going to get your demise, and you ain't going to like it because you ain't going to see it coming.
And there was another verse where it said, if my people call out to me in any way, and I hear it, that's going to be it. And I can't recall what chapter verse that was in, but I quoted it. You'll probably see it when you're reading it. But basically, I felt like, okay, he's telling me something and it's working in my life, because I was dealing with bullies left and right from the time I was in the military to the time to the present time. But in the military, I don't think I dealt with it properly. In fact, I know I didn't. What I was doing was trying to fight it in my own power. I was trying to go round for round, or my intelligence against their intelligence, or right versus wrong. When it comes to a misguided person who's power obsessed, logic is out the window. They have an agenda, and that agenda is to get their way, whatever their way is. And if it involves grinding you to dust to shut you up, that's what's going to happen. And if the powers that be are all aligned with that person, you may not stand a chance. You know what I mean? So I learned that, okay, I can't fight this in my own power. Let me call out to God. And how I did it was a lot of times in writing, or at night when I'm in bed, I'll just lay there and I'll talk to him. And he would defend me all the time. But along the way, I also had to learn that I had to be walking in excellence. I couldn't just be doing any old kind of thing all day and then think at night he's going to hear me and fight for me. Meaning, like, get your stuff together. Don't be on the phone at work talking all the time. You can't get your work done and your work is lackluster. You're non-productive. You're always at the water cooler. You're always in the kitchen. Your phone's always ringing. Your cell phone's always ringing. You're always on the phone. You're gone all the time. And then you wonder why your boss is not happy with you and is always picking on you. God can't defend you if your lifestyle and your choices aren't excellent. He wants us to be excellent. Even if we're not, at least try.
I agree with that fully because it's very important. You can't just ask for promotion and you're doing lackluster work or no work at all.
Right. Popping gum, sitting on the phone, and you're not even talking with respect around the office. You answer the phone like you could care less who's, those sorts of things they don't look good for you. So you got to step up your game in order for God to really work in your life, because he wants to work in your life and work for you, but he has to know that you are trying to be obedient. And to be obedient in a lot of ways means you have to submit to the authority to which you're under. It doesn't mean that they have the right to oppress you, but it does mean when you're on their grounds, you're in their facility, and you're earning a paycheck and they're paying you for work, you got to deliver on the work. It doesn't mean that they can enslave you. And I think a lot of employers get that twisted. We're all employees of someone, and even our supervisors aren't paying us. So sometimes they even get things, a little bit out of hand. They sort of feel like they're signing the paychecks when they really aren't. We're all working for the government, the people. So it's a lot with that.
Yeah, agreed. I think it was Brian Tracy who talks about you're the one who signs your own paycheck. You're the one who decides to work for that company. And at the end of the day, if you decide to come in that day on time and you complain the whole time, then you get what you get.
Right. I actually have read his books too. I got one now. I think it's by Brian Tracy, Speak to Win.
Woo! I love that one.
You do?
Yes, read that back in 2014 when I was trying to conduct my first public speaking seminar. Gave me some great tips.
Oh, cool. So I'm reading that one, and I got this one too. I don't know if you've heard this one. How to Say It With Your Voice.
That's a classic one. I haven't picked that one up yet.
It's pretty good. It teaches you that there are, hidden things that you may not be aware of that you could be doing. Not pronouncing words correctly, or I guess they call it the lazy tongue, where you might know how to say the word, but you don't even put the final ending on the words for whatever reason, like words that end in ing. But I know we're digressing.
That's actually part of the show, because one of the questions I like to ask my guests is what book has inspired you to take action and why, or at least what you're currently reading.
Oh, yes. I've definitely taken a lot of action. I felt like, so here's why I wrote the book. First of all, after I read the Bible and I figured out, not that I figured out or unlocked everything, because there's so many things that you can learn from it. I mean, you could read it 20 times and still feel like you're learning stuff in it. But I learned on the topic of oppressors and bullies how to fight using God's word, basically by letting him fight for you. So what he'll do is he'll remove that obstacle from your life. And I know a lot of people may not believe it, but in my life, it's worked. I've prayed on it. I've talked to God. I've written on it, journaled it. And those oppressors have gone. Like, gone. It took some time, but they're gone. They don't bother me anymore, and I'm walking my victory, okay? So then my friends started coming to me and telling me about all this oppression going on in their lives, their jobs, their bosses ganging up on them, different people, co-workers. And I tell them the same thing I'm telling you. Okay, let's pray about it and continue to pray, but live excellently. Do your part. Make sure there's nothing that they can pin on you that will stick. Make sure your nose is clean in all areas, you know. But again, those same people constantly came to me over and over as if the prayer part didn't even matter. Like, that's not something they're willing to do. They want to fight in their own power. They want to write an email to so-and-so or start a paper trail or send them to the IG, you know, something like that. Those sorts of things will work. But again, I think that's more fighting in your power versus letting God fight it for you. So that's why I wrote the book, because I felt like people needed to hear all these stories that can attest to what I'm telling you.
And I have to admit, you did a great job of pulling out stories that folks may have heard before, but bringing in a different light from a bullying standpoint too. Because when I first picked up this book, I was like, okay, is this woman a preacher? Because I'm seeing so many scripture references, and she's using the Amplified Bible, which is awesome. Because it gives you extra words to...
Right. My husband said the same thing. I said it's a turn off because it's scripturally based. It's not Darnnell's words. It's me pulling it out for you, but showing you what scripture said about it. I was a little, you know, I didn't want to be a turn off by, you know, quoting so much from the Bible, but they were in there, and I had to, you know, give credit where credit was due, because this is not me. You know what I mean?
Agreed, because a lot of folks, they may try to go back and dig from older material, or heck, even someone from today, and not give them credit, and then package it as their own. It's like, no, if you got this from this specific book, be sure to quote where you got it from.
Exactly. So that's what I did. I mean, it's not all the Bible, but it's basically stories from the Bible. How else do you relay it without given that citation? This is where I got it from. So it was my way of giving back to others. Like, I don't want anyone else to go through tormenting situations, bullying situations, and they never stop. They continue. I don't know if you know, but you might defeat one giant, and then a week later another one is going to come right back and pop up. They just don't go away. But there's a key to how you deal with it, and I wanted people to know, don't be afraid when all these things start happening. This is a part of the process. Just know how to fight it.
I agree with you fully, because, I mean, Jesus himself, he was baptized by John the Baptist, and God came from the sky saying, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased, and then right after that went straight into the wilderness.
Exactly. And he knew how to deal with it. He knew not to open his mouth when they reviled him. He did not revile back. He did not go back and forth. He didn't argue with them. He didn't try to make friends with them. And a lot of times we don't know when we need to shut up and let God fight. And then we're also not living excellently. Jesus lived excellently. He didn't have a skeleton that anybody could hang over his head. See, this is what you do. Although they lied, nothing stuck because it was lies.
Yeah, Jesus was the man in terms of putting down the morons known as the Pharisees.
Yes, he did. And he did it in victory. Although, you know, he sacrificed his life for us, and it doesn't sometimes appear like he won. He won. Ultimately, he was able to slay the devil and put him to bed for good. He defeated him, and he did all of this for us, for our freedom. So I refuse to give myself back over to any enslavements, and that would be bullying or giants or anything. Nothing's going to have me fear that I can't overcome, and I'm walking in fear and stuff. No, it's not going to happen.
There you go. So you're a woman with a bunch of experience. So you got the spiritual walk that you're going through right now, and then you have this IT background. And of course, thank you for your wonderful service during the first Gulf War. Appreciate you for that. So if a person was today, they wanted to just go into the military and they wanted to pursue IT as well, what advice would you give them?
For IT, I would say there are so many places you can get experience, whether it's your local cable company, because they basically are the backbone of what I would call the internet. So if you're watching TV, you have to know that you're getting your signal from somewhere in cyberspace or someone's server sitting at a server farm. So any of those type of experience could get you more experience, and you don't have to be the one, just sitting there answering the phone for customer service. If you tell them, hey, I'd like to be on the back end, I like to be on the technical side, I like to be on the troubleshooting team, which they call like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, they'll let you. But if you want to go the more traditional route, then the military would be a way of doing it. Just make sure you pick the field that specifically states it's something to do with computers, cyber, intelligence, or hardware, server hardware, that sort of thing, computer repair. Or you could go into college, take courses in college. They got tons of them. Nowadays, I would recommend, if people wanted to go into computer, definitely do something like cyber intelligence or forensics. I think those are really cool, very interesting offshoots of IT.
Yeah, because IT is huge these days, especially with all the certifications like the A+, Security Plus, Net Plus.
And that can get a little daunting, because if they're expecting you to have all these certifications, you have to pay for those. Sometimes they'll pay, but most of the time you're paying for them. And they're hard. And not only that, where does it end? Are you constantly going to be getting these certifications? At some point, you just want to just do your job and do a good job, and not fear that because the next person who's got all these alphabets by their name is going to, knock you out of your spot. And that happens. People come in with all these letters by their name, and they may not know anything. All they've done is test it well.
So you hear that, folks? You not only got to test well, you got to work well. You got to know your stuffs.
That's what I say. I feel like if you get your experience with the hands-on, you're in it, you're doing it, you're touching it, you're feeling it, that's better than, taking a test. But there are people out there who will make you feel like you're inferior because you don't have those letters next to your name. But to me, you're going to be chasing letters for a long time if that's your motivation, because those certifications constantly change, and one certification one year might be changed drastically the next year, and you're obsolete.
Yeah, especially I think it was Microsoft, I believe, the time when I think I was going for it at one time. It was like the MCSE, and now they changed it to MSCNE or something like that.
Right, so now you don't even want to put it on your resume because you feel like you're old or outdated, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's like, alright, this guy's got gray hair. Wait, he graduated high school last year? Nah, he's got gray hair.
I don't knock them, but I mean, that's a lot of time in your life that you could have spent just actually doing the job, basically.
But hey, folks want to see certifications and degrees and whatnot, not just the temperature, but all that good stuff.
They say that, but I honestly work in an environment where one of my teammates has all these certs by her name, and I don't, and we're in the same level, and I've done more. She's trying to get to where I've been. She's trying to do forensic analysis. She's trying to do cyber crimes. I've already done it. While she was trying to get those alphabets, I was actually doing it. My resume shows I did it. Her resume says what school she's attending to get that.
Yeah, I think it's also about timing too, because some folks, they may be in the right place at the right time, as opposed to others, they may be just fighting, scratching, and clawing just to get to that place at any time.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, because some people do seem to get breaks, and that part I can't explain, because I felt like that person who never got breaks. I did, but I guess I have to change my mindset, you know what I mean?
That's right, because mindset is everything. So speaking of help, what advice would you give to yourself if you were 25 in 2017?
Ooh, good grief. You know what I tell myself? Shut up. Put your listening ears on. You don't have to respond to everything, and you don't have to say everything that's on your mind. So I would definitely tell myself to just be quiet and probably do what you advised in your Going North book. You know, read, nurture myself, educate myself, not to become a nerd or information factory, but just so that I could solidify what it is I think I know. Because you think you know more than you do when you're 25. But you don't, unfortunately. You got a lot of talk and a little bit of brain. And even those who have college degrees, I would say the same thing. Talk less and just learn more. Learn all you can. Study people. Study how they are. Study books on people. Study the human condition. You know, educate yourself about different things, and that way you won't be one of those pompous people who just start spouting off stuff and they clearly know nothing.
I guess it goes back to that saying about the 2 ears, 1 mouth, right?
Yes. How do you think, you as a 25, 26-year-old, how do you feel? I know it's like you can't, say what would you do differently, but do you feel like there are people in your age group who are quick to offer an opinion, and they really aren't coming from a place of knowledge?
I would say yes, there's a few, like a small few, but then again, most folks in my circles are either older than me or very few are younger than me. But probably say one person probably used to be friends with who would always sometimes give unsolicited advice. And it would sound good, but it just wouldn't sit right. Like, wait a second. Wait a second. First of all, you gave advice I ain't want to hear, and it sounds good, but it doesn't really sound like it makes sense. Like, okay.
And I will say, even at 46, I'll be 46 in December, we have to not do that as well. Once you start getting older and the knowledge is deep and it is accurate knowledge, we have to be mindful that everybody doesn't want to hear what we have to say. So I think it's a balancing act. Like, I don't feel comfortable talking to a person of my age, telling them, well, you should do, and you should do, and you should do. Like, this person has lived this long. They know what they're doing, and if they don't, God help them. Because it's not up to us to start trying to tell people what to do. We can only show by example how we live. Because that falls back into, I want the freedom to come and go and do what I'm doing without anyone, imposing on me. And unsolicited advice is imposing.
Yeah, that's right. They'd be like, yeah, let me give you a piece of my mind. Like, no, keep that inside of the pizza box. I don't want none of it.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to be a hard-headed jerk. Like, if you're trying to help me and you really just want to help me not walk in front of a moving car, I don't mind that. It's the, I'm doing my daily thing. I might be going to the grocery store. I might be picking up my, whatever, dry cleaning. It's those things where you're doing the most common of things and people always want to give you advice on a way that you should do it because they've done it. Well, I go to Zips. I think you should go to Zips because Zips charges way less. But you might not like Zips. Zips might not start your clothes the way you care for. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to just talk about things that could help us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the actual help. The actual
right. help. It's just, some people feel like the way they do things is the best way, and there's like a ton of ways to skin a cat, so they say. So that's what I mean.
So for the folks at home, how can we get in contact with you and keep up with all the good stuff that you're doing, Darnnell?
Oh, I have a Facebook page. It's called Victorious with God, and it's on Facebook. And if you'd like to tweet me, At Darnell's, Darnnells, and Instagram, it's Darnell's, Darnnells.
Woo! Well, there you have it, folks. Go on ahead and follow Darnnell on all the social media handles. Buy a book or 20. Support her. She even has an audio for those folks who don't like to read.
Yes, I do. And Kindle. Got Kindle too.
See, there you go. Even ebook too, y'all. So if you want to read the ebook on your phone or your tablet, not the one you swallow, go on ahead and pick up that book on ebook as well.
Got one more special thing for them. When I did the audio book, they gave me these codes so I could give them out to people for free, and then they can get a download. And I don't give them out often because I wait for people to ask. So if you don't ask, that's why you don't have. You have not because you ask not.
That's right.
But if you ask me, I will give you one.
So you hear that, folks? Shoot Darnnell Reese an email at
darnells@gmail.com.
That's right. Once you get that download code, buy one for your siblings. Heck, buy one for your grown adult sister or brother. So that way they can learn how to let God fight their battles and defeat them bullies.
Amen.
Thanks a bunch for your tuning ears on the Going North podcast. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to, once again, check out my book Going North on Amazon.com and CreateSpace.com. And if you'd like, feel free to follow me on social media at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at Dom Brightman, YouTube at Dom Brightman. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn as well, I am there at Dom Brightman as well. Go out